We're going. We're live. Let's do it live. Welcome back to EEG World, to the thousands of people out there watching. Thank you for tuning in. I promoted this on YouTube only. I didn't put this on any other platforms. And we have two concurrent viewers. Imagine that. If you're watching this after the fact, I'm going to put timestamps down in the video description so you don't have to listen to me bumble through the beginning. What are we doing today? Well, we're building a remote neurofeedback container, like it says in the title. And I've been wonderfully inspired by Anne-Marie Leconte, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Her book, Tiny Experiments and Embodying an Experimental Mindset and Learning in Public. And I'm excited to launch this course, and even more excited to be sharing sort of the end stages of development with the masses, the millions of excited neurofeedback enthusiasts out there. So what I want to do today is talk about the problems with neurofeedback, the challenges of neurofeedback and remote neurofeedback specifically, and how I would like to change that, to address that, and to do something different in my own kind of style. So how did this begin? About a year ago, I called up my friend James Kroll, and subscribe to the channel because we have an episode coming out soon. And I said, I want to create a course that is the course that I wish I had 10 years ago when I started doing neurofeedback. I got into neurofeedback because I wanted to improve my attention and improve my mood regulation. And I'm happy to report it's 100% fixed. I'm focused all of the time and happy all of the time. No, what happened was I stumbled around and didn't know what I was doing for quite a while. And have been doing neurofeedback and studying applied psychophysiology and quantitative EEG brain mapping assessment for the last 10 years, and sort of seriously and professionally for the last 5. And so I called him up and I said, hey, what if we created the course that I wish I had 10 years ago when I was still in college? And he said yes. And he was thinking the same thing. So James and I have been developing this until quite recently, until we decided to do it independently from one another. And I see this as an opportunity to kind of cue potential interested people and even colleagues into a conversation around how to do something that's quite difficult, which is change someone's brain in all of its complexity and nuance and resistance in the comfort of their own home, but with a high level of customization, individualization, and support too. So let's talk about some of the problems. I've been doing some research on professional courses and transformational courses, and I've done quite a few of them myself. I've been to intensive yoga teacher trainings, different leadership type courses, meditation retreats, sort of, let's say, something adjacent to kind of like a ayahuasca journey. And to me, the problem with all of these is that they have a poorly defined leverage on neuroplasticity, right? And I made a brief video about this a little while ago. None of these things can work if they don't work on your brain, on changing your brain. Neuroplasticity is what actually allows us to change and grow in how we perceive the world and process information, interact with people. Anything we might want to achieve in a professional course or a sort of spiritual experience, or including a meditation retreat. And this is where neurofeedback training comes in. Right? With neurofeedback, it's not as sexy as a retreat or an ayahuasca trip or one of these sort of high-level, high-power, flow research collective type like courses. But we can address specific dysfunctions in the brain in a methodological, iterative training fashion, like you would go to a PT to address a knee injury. With neurofeedback, we can do knee rehab for your stuck anterior cingulate, to pick one brain region as an example. And there's plenty of places that are offering this, right? We have both in-person neurofeedback at clinics across the country. When people hear about the existence of neurofeedback, they're like, well, why haven't I heard of it? And the answer is, in most major cities in the US, there aren't that many places doing it. In a big city, there might be a handful, rarely double digits. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but in my prior place of living, a big city, there's only 2 or 3 clinics, and this is a city of many millions of people. And it just hasn't proliferated, I think, to the extent that it could. And so the difficulty with that in-person model, of course, is that you have to go into the office. If you're going to be doing 2 sessions of your training per week, you have to commute there. You're paying for the time of the clinician for the whole duration of the training. And sometimes that's necessary and valuable, but it's not always the most convenient or effective way for individuals to get enough training sessions in an economical way. And so that brings us to remote neurofeedback training. And right now we're experiencing an exciting and also somewhat challenging, growth of these different remote neurofeedback options. There's plenty of them out there. I think many of them are great. And so far as I am aware, all of them are individual, right? One-on-one. So you're working directly with a clinician, and oftentimes you're working with someone who works for a company but isn't necessarily the person who has a background in functional neuroimaging, and may not be the person who actually looked at the brain map and sort of did the decision-making process around what kind of neurofeedback protocols are appropriate to be doing. So there's this problem of the disconnect between the individual and the person who actually knows their brain and the person who's facilitating the training session. The other issue I see with this is that, people who are doing neurofeedback, obviously they can and should have their own support network of friends, family, loved ones, therapists. But we're missing an opportunity by not bringing groups of people who are doing neurofeedback together that could otherwise be sort of talking about and processing and adjusting to their kind of new way of being that they're moving into as a result of changing the brain and the way that they see the world. And that adjustment is part of the process. It's part of what a clinician is there to guide the individual through. And it's an inevitable part of the process. Not to romanticize the challenge of the changes that people experience in neurofeedback, but as the brain changes for the better, hopefully, there's a concurrent shift in our perception of the world and our ability to regulate for the better, and also our perception of our own past challenges and kind of hang-ups, right? Helping an individual through neurofeedback to improve their brain's capacity for social emotional perception, for example, is going to be inevitably associated with their perception of more stimuli, various types of stimuli, as far as how their own behavior is impacting the emotions and experiences of the people around them. And that's, just one target of neurofeedback. That's not to say that everyone is going into it with that goal or with a brain that's sort of in need in that kind of tune-up. But just to make the point that if someone is very tuned out socially and starts actually tuning up that capacity, they're going to start to realize some uncomfortable truths about themselves and what that means for their relationships. And of course, that's something they can process with their therapist, with their loved ones. But I see an opportunity generally for a group raising of our mind energy in a neurofeedback cohort. So the other problem I'll just mention with remote neurofeedback is there is, and neurofeedback in general, is there's a limitation to how much progress you can make that is really proportional to the quality of the map you get at the beginning, the functional neuroimaging, and the interpretation of that data. And in my experience, the neuropsychological interpretation of EEG and quantitative EEG, the sort of reading the tea leaves of what's actually happening in a person's brain and how that corresponds with their challenges and lived experience, is something of a lost art. And so if that sounds foreign or confusing to you, you're welcome to check out my channel. I've put, Trace Neuroanalytics are the videos where I have showcased the process of analyzing an EEG and, doing this sort of symptom correlation. Not that I'm a doctor, but that I've done, countless hours, probably thousands of hours of EEG interpretation on my own and with mentors Jay Gunkelman and Yuri Kropotov and Mary Tracy and Michael Pierce, really correlating what is going on in the phenomenology of someone's brain with what's happening in their lived experience. And all too often, I don't really see an attempt at that in the QEEGs and brain maps that people are getting to guide their neurofeedback. And it does require going through the raw EEG and actually making sense of this very high dimensional data on multiple levels of dimensionality and with just a background in doing that. So there's a possibility to do remote neurofeedback at a higher level than I think most people have access to at the moment. And I'm a big fan of getting it right the first time, because if someone gets a crappy brain map and then does neurofeedback with a so-so protocol, or maybe not the most appropriate protocol for them, what can happen is they can have an adverse reaction, or they just don't get the change that they want and they get turned off to something that could be potentially transformative. So the vision is to do high-quality neurofeedback at a price that is more affordable than doing it in most clinics, with a cohort of individuals who are also committed and excited about the brain transformation process, and with a trainer, me, who isn't someone who's an employee of a company who just sort of knows how to encourage people, but actually who is the person that is reviewing the EEG and understanding what's happening in the neurodynamics of each individual's brain at a pretty high level. So that is the vision. And in addition to that, I view the sort of community element, the Zoom calls that we'll be doing on a weekly basis, as an opportunity for mindfulness and for expanding our conscious experience and awareness in our day-to-day life. And so if that freaks you out, don't worry, I'm not going to make you meditate. My background, I have a background in Vipassana and Zen meditation. I've sat many meditation retreats before. But I won't make you meditate in this course. My current sort of framework I'm looking for the book here. My current framework is based in the effortless mindfulness approach that the wonderful teacher and consultant and leader in the field of meditation, Block Kelly, has created. This, I don't know if you can see this, is probably backwards. The book is called Shift into Freedom, The Science and Practice of Open-Hearted Awareness. That's the name of his sort of style, and it's rooted in the Indo-Tibetan tradition, Mahamudra. And I think this framework for how the mind works is really compatible with understanding the changes that happen in neurofeedback, and does not demand that we, take 10 days out of our life and go on a silent meditation retreat. In fact, the Mahamudra tradition, the sort of origins of this style, arose among people who were laborers, people who were in different sort of jobs and professions and families. They weren't sort of like a kind of spiritual athlete class. They were just normal people. And instead of meditating, we marinate. So we instead of going on retreat, we have little brief glimpses into the nature of minds and into open-hearted awareness in these brief little moments that I feel are transformational over time, as far as stepping out of the story that we're stuck in and stepping into a more embodied and present sense of reality. And ultimately, that's what we want with neurofeedback, whether it's improving your focus, your attention, your mood regulation, your sleep. These are all sort of methods towards bringing us closer to a more embodied and present and fulfilled life. So we're going to be approaching that from both the brain hardware direction, actually working with the groups of neurons in cortical areas of the brain, as well as together reflecting and inquiring and practicing brief mindful glimpses that are formulated and to shift into freedom, to use the title of the book. So that's the vision. And I'm curious to anyone who is watching or following this sometime in the future, what else you would like to see in a remote neurofeedback container. And now I'll talk a little bit about the specifics of what it will actually look like to join this course, when it's starting, what the demands are of your time and energy and money, and what you can expect to get out of it. So the course is set to begin on Thursday, May 8th. The tentative time is noon Eastern. The cost for the course is $2,700, $2,700. And what's included in that is a brain map, a high-level, in-depth, high-quality quantitative EEG at the beginning of the course, so 10 minutes eyes open and 10 minutes eyes closed. And that will be achieved through a combination of local providers that I will be connecting participants with. And for those who are not close to a local provider, we will arrange for you to do it remotely. I have a remote kit that I can ship out. I probably can't ship it out to everyone in the course. So we'll divide and conquer. But even if you get a local QEEG based in your physical proximity, I will be interpreting that data and designing protocols for you to do neurofeedback with. And now how are we going to deploy the actual neurofeedback? Well, the tagline, I'm still coming up with like the name here for this course, but the idea is to change your brain without getting off your ass. So thanks to Penny Jean Gracefire for coming up with that. From the comfort of your own couch, you're going to be doing your customized, personalized neurofeedback. And we're going to be using the BrainBit Flex, which is a cap that you put on that has dry sensors that I'm going to educate you all on how to use. It's very simple. I've been using it for remote neurofeedback and in-person neurofeedback with myself and with clients very successfully for the past few months now. And you're going to get one of these devices and you're going to be able to run your neurofeedback training directly off of your phone using the Divergence platform, the Dive app. I have a video on my channel if you're interested in a little sneak peek at what that looks like, and obviously I'll be showcasing that more, both on my channel here and on my Instagram. But it's amazing that in this day and age you can get a device that fits in a little box that's not much bigger than this. I actually have one right here. In the year 2025, we can be doing neurofeedback with something that fits in this little box. And so this is an amazing device. We have our little wire harness that clips on, and this is the amplifier itself, and we have little gold electrodes that snap in to a cap. And the cap, we just put the electrodes in the right location, which will differ depending on what is going on in your brain and where we're trying to juice things up. You put them in the cap and you put the cap on your head. And what's great about it is that it runs directly from your phone or tablets, and I will be programming in videos into the Divergence app. And the neurofeedback training is something that you do for 10 to 20 minutes a day, most days out of the week. We can talk more about training volume. If you're going to do 10 minutes a day, if you get it in 5 or 6 days a week, that's enough to affect a massive transformation in your brain if you do that consistently for 3 months. And the actual training is not that difficult as far as effort is concerned. You put the cap on, you get the sensors in place, you open up the app, and the training effect is actually achieved by just watching a video through the app, and the screen brightens and dims proportional, and the volume increases and decreases proportional to the desired change that we're trying to affect with the neurofeedback. So I'll do a demonstration of that in a future live stream. I'm going to be doing these live streams every Thursday, building up to the course, and then also as the course continues, I will be broadcasting to the world all the exciting developments and learnings from this course. So y'all will be doing your training on your own, and because it's a group cohort, we'll also have sort of like rotating buddies, if you will. So you can do your training at the same time as another person. We can also have a training room in the Discord server, so that if folks want to set a time to sort of keep it on their calendar and have accountability with that, some people really enjoy that. So in addition to doing your training on your own, I will be supporting each participant in the course one-on-one every week. And so we will schedule a time to do a session together to review the changes you're experiencing, and also to potentially course correct depending on how the protocol is working for you. And so this is, again, one of the benefits of being able to do neurofeedback with a person who has read your QEEG, is that as the training goes on, I'll be able to pick up on if the protocol needs a little bit of tweaking. And that does happen, right? People's brains do change over time. And there's nothing worse than sticking with a protocol that's not working for you. So you'll be able to run as many neurofeedback sessions as you want on your own. You'll be able to meet with me once a week. We will have a group call, a group inquiry session where we celebrate our wins to talk about what's working, what's not working, and also just reflect on consciousness, awareness, our own attitudes, our own growth in a way that is supportive and allows for some conversation around all the positive and challenging changes that are happening as a result of growth. We're going to begin on May 8th, and I will start accepting registrations on the 10th of this month. So a week from today is when the registration page will go live and people can submit their applications. There is an application fee. I will require a deposit of $900 that is non-refundable for people's spots to be reserved in the course. And then the remainder of the course fee will be due on the first day of the course, and I'll also offer a 3-month financing plan for the rest, right? So it'll be $900 that's due as the deposit, and then you can either pay the rest of the $1,800 on May 8th, or we can do $600 through my Stan store once a month for 3 months. This device will not be for you to keep. It's a rental device. Obviously, you can do a purchase of the device if you want to at a discounted rate at the end of the course. And for those who want to continue doing neurofeedback, we can discuss follow-up QEEG at the end of the course. And we're going to have a little celebration. We're going to have a little party at the end to just appreciate all of the work that everyone has put in, and to acknowledge all of the changes that folks have done by putting in the time. Current working name for the course is Coherence, Decoding Brain Evolution. It is a bespoke neurofeedback intensive cohort. And when I say intensive, that's because it does, on some level, require more involvement than just showing up at a clinic 2 times a week. But this isn't the type of thing where I expect folks to take an hour out of their day every day to do this. Neurofeedback is effective even when we're doing 20 minutes a few times a week. And sometimes surprisingly so. Some neurofeedback protocols, we can't run them for more than 5 or 10 minutes without really having a strong effect. So I'm excited to continue the development of this, and I will post this video on some different channels. Let me know, what else would you like to see in a remote neurofeedback course? Have you done one before? Are you curious about neurofeedback? What do you feel like is missing from this? And what do you want to hear more about? Because I'm excited for this, and we already have 2 people signed up. I haven't set a limit yet for how many folks are going to be in here, but certainly we can't have a humongous cohort since it's going to be me that is doing all of the one-on-one guidance sessions with folks. So I'm excited to see you all in the future, and head over to traceneuro.co if you would like to get on the mailing list for future announcements about this and the registration for the course. And stay tuned to the channel. I'm going to have James Kroll next week, and a lot more episodes coming out of EEG Worlds. So subscribe if you haven't already yet. And thanks for watching.